Okay, so here we are at the iterate phase, and we've analyzed and synthesized everything we learned from testing, and we've picked some directions to go in, and now we need to actually develop the next set of prototypes and advance our idea, basically. So I'm going to zoom into this first tool, which asks us to combine reflections and ideas to make a new idea that we're going to work toward. So I'm going to go back to our test tool, and I'm going to look down at the alignment page. And the idea that we ended up selecting was kind of this idea around supporting kids in terms of learning how to learn, and doing that through a fun, entertaining, like character almost. So I'm going to copy those into the iterate document. But I wonder if we can also review and look for some other ideas that are relevant. So I'm going to go back up to our where we the reflection grid, where we generated some ideas. So yeah, what feels relevant?
I think there's something still pretty important about having strategies for being online, but also somehow accessible offline if needed. Mm-hmm. So I'd like to sort of hold on to that at least as a prompt, so that we're not necessarily making something that's, already beneficial for the people who already have a lot of access.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this idea of kind of it should not feel like a lesson plan, and that it is kind of entertaining and has this graphic novel element, I think are really good ones that we could use.
I agree.
And then I also wonder about this idea of the scouting handbook, kind of what the strategies are like. Mm-hmm. So it's not, again, like a full lesson plan or like trying to train parents to be formal educators, but it's more giving them kind of the tools that they need. And I think this flow chart idea also kind of falls into that. So I'm going to copy those forward as well.
Great.
All right. So we have several ideas here. And if we think about kind of high level, what we're trying to accomplish, is there like a single headline that comes to you?
So, and we are, I mean, I guess maybe I sort of have some more questions that I wonder if you and I could sort of talk through, which is like, on the one hand, I think there could be one idea that is very much about like a graphic novel, sort of a set of stories about like challenges and how parents have responded and some things like that. I guess we had said that we were going to stay focused on the student. So is it really, I don't know. It seems like there's the narrative component to a lot of what there's sort of like a referential, like a reference ability, which is like first aid kit, scout handbook kind of thing. There's sort of a narrative component that's kind of like the science guy, the graphic novel. And then there's sort of like a functionality component that's like, it's not a lesson plan. It has backup versions. It is a flow chart. So I guess that I feel like what that is sort of describing is like all those things are kind of like how it might work, but I guess I'm not really sure about what it is. And I mean, I think that's what we're working on for the pink Post-it, but
yeah. Well, so I think, I mean, I think it's interesting to think about like, what does, Bill Nye, the science guy, how does he function in terms of sharing knowledge? And then I agree with you, like the format and the way that it comes across, we can work out. But but I wonder if there's something there about having kind of a main character that's like your source of information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like that idea. So there's something, there's some sort of like hero, protagonist, guide, coach kind of character. I think that seems great.
And then maybe you could read about that person. You could watch a video about that person. Like they could share tips and strategies. I also really like this idea that like that would be kid friendly. Like there's kind of this mascot or this character, but that parents would also enjoy that. Like I think that's the other thing I think about Bill Nye the Science Guy is that it was mostly a kids show, but I think adults also liked watching it. So, I wonder, do you want to like watch a clip of Bill Nye?
Sure.
Really quickly?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll look something up. And I'll share my screen.
Okay.
I haven't seen the show in a long time.
When you do the screen share, I think there's also a button at the bottom that says optimize screen share for video clip.
Yep.
Will you click that? I'm curious to see how it might affect it.
Okay. All right. I'm just pulling it up. And then share my screen. Okay. It's going to play an ad.
Okay.
Before. But,
Bill Nye the Science Guy. Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Imagining distances in space is difficult because everything is so far apart. But think of it this way. Let's say that this miniature soccer ball is the size of our sun, and it's right on the goal of a soccer field. Then this speck is Mercury. This is Venus. This tip of a ballpoint pen is our Earth, 2.5 meters from the miniature soccer ball sun. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, 25 meters from the goal. Uranus, and Neptune, 76 meters away. And Pluto's back here, almost out of the building, 100 meters away. How far do you think it is to the next star? Well, it's not in here.
Kids, don't drive this way at home. You could leave tire marks on the living room carpet.
Well, I hope I unplug the iron.
Is that the viaduct?
Yeah. He was driving on the viaduct.
Amazing.
It would be here. The nearest star would be here. 7 hours of highway driving, about 700 kilometers away. And that's only if you think of the star as being this big. I mean, real stars are huge, enormously huge,
right.
Enormously, bigly huge.
All right, already.
Nothing like this. You couldn't get to the nearest star if you traveled your entire lifetime. No way. It's kind of cold out here.
Bill Nye the Science Guy.
Okay. So a little throwback to childhood.
Yeah.
So what is it about Bill? Like what was that? What made that appealing? Like, what role did he play?
Yeah, I mean, he's sort of larger than life. It's entertaining. It's visual. You know, he found a way to sort of take a big concept like stars and distance and break it down into stuff that most people know, which is like little things across a soccer field, which we all know, some stuff like that.
He seems really smart and like an expert, but he was in like a soccer uniform. So like he was approachable, I guess.
Yeah.
Like he didn't seem like an intimidating guy.
Yeah. I might write down a few of these things as we're talking about it.
Awesome. So it's like, he seems like he could be like your uncle or your neighbor, but he's got a lot of knowledge to share. But he does it in a really, like you're saying, like relatable and fun and funny way.
Yeah.
Cool. So
so I guess this is where I'm getting like, but what's Bill Nye gonna teach? Like, you know, I mean, I guess that's kind of the thing where it's like Bill Nye, the Science Guy, that's his name. So he's like just doing episodes on science. Is that what we're talking about doing? Like, are we gonna have a Polly parent teacher or like Terry teacher or something, and she makes like content every subject in that school, or what do you think about?
The way I was thinking about it, it would more be like this idea of learning how to learn. So like our Bill Nye the Science Guy would be like, this is how your brain works. Like, this is how you learn new information. Like, this is what it means to apply information. Like, this is what it means when you feel stuck. Here's some strategies for how to feel stuck. Like, here are different strategies for learning. Like, maybe you draw it. Maybe you write about it. Maybe you act it out, you know? So like they would really, their expertise would be about how to learn. But they would be sharing it in like a really fun, relatable, funny way.
So does a student need to understand how learning works to just learn better? Like if you provided like if you gave a math worksheet, you gave a math video, you gave a math activity that involves like flying a kite in your neighborhood, those are probably all very different ways of learning, and students might feel more engaged and learn more at different ones. But like, do they need to know that, you know, embodied learning is a method by which using your human skills relates physical actions to cognitive growth? Like, do they need to know that to learn?
Well, I don't know that they need to know the neuroscience, you know, necessarily, although I think we could bring that in if we wanted to. But I think this is the bet that we're making, and this is kind of the leap that we're making, because there's lots of stuff out there about here's a math assignment and like here's how to make an animation of the math assignment. Like there's so much content-based stuff. But I feel like what we're hearing from our stakeholders is that there's not a lot of support about how. So, you know, if we have our character who's like, all right, like today we're going to talk about preparing to learn. And like, it's actually really important to get into the right headspace before you actually do your schoolwork. And so, you know, let's try meditating, like, or run around the block, and then you can be ready to focus. Or today we're going to talk about preparing to learn, but we're going to talk about your workspace. So like try and sit by a window, you know? So coming up with those strategies, not about the content, but about like how set yourself up for success, or how you learn best.
Okay.
And it's the stuff, in my mind, it's the stuff that a lot of teachers just do instinctually that they're not thinking about, or it is not in their lesson plan. But, thinking about like, okay, like I need to not talk for more than 5 minutes at a time. Like the kids need to be up and like using their hands, or they need to like calm down and relax. And like how teachers build that in, and parents don't have that knowledge. And kids don't necessarily, I think, they're not metacognitively aware. It's more like it just happens at school. Like we sit on the carpet, we read a story, then we do our math work. They're not thinking like the teacher's helping them transition into their learning.
By moving your physical body to a new space, you create a new headspace that allows you to learn in a new way. Like, I guess what I'm sort of trying to say though is like making, and we'll have to sort of figure this out, but like I see it as like making a video about meditating as a tool for reframing how you then go do your math class feels like an additional what? Like, what do? I watch a different video about how I should do a different thing, as opposed to like the kids just not focused. And it's like, okay, great. Like here is like the kid totally unfocused. Like we can't seem to do this. We've been working for an hour. Then and you like grab an activity that's like go near the window and like meditate for like, it just sort of is the activities, and embedded in activities is the better how of like reframe and things like that, as opposed to creating tools about how to do other classes, sort of.
Yeah. So
it's very nuanced.
Yeah, I get what you're saying though. I mean, I think maybe part of it is how the resource is structured. So like identifying like what is the challenge to learning, and here's the strategy. So you wouldn't just randomly pick a Bill Nye video about the universe. You would pick a video about losing focus. And then, I like the idea. I mean, Bill Nye was more about knowledge transfer than he was about an active thing. It was like we were watching him do the experiment with the balls and the distance. But we could totally make the videos like the tool that says like, okay, you're losing focus. Like here's our character, and the character is going to kind of explain why, and then guide through the what. I think that could be great.
Yeah, to sort of do it, and that way it sort of exists out. Because I think we heard this from like both Arjun and Halima and a lot of other folks in our world, which is like, the teachers still exist. They're still creating content to the best of their ability. They're sending it out. There's expectations for like worksheets to be finished and things like that. So I feel like this is essentially a set of activities that are the teacherly things to do beyond the like lesson plan. I feel like sort of, and that's kind of where like the Boy Scout handbook is a little bit about how to like tie a knot to do a thing. But it's a lot more about sort of just like do this thing so you can get to this better outcome.
Right. And I honestly, I mean, I think I personally value this idea. I think that we could do this better in education in general, is like helping kids be aware of how they learn best, and like what are the strategies. Like I think I'm really excited about this idea of kind of pulling back the curtain and saying like, the teacher, you have recess for a reason.
Yeah.
Like we turn down the lights and read a story for a reason. I have you in table groups for a reason. As opposed to it just kind of happening for the kids and them not understanding like, oh, there's actually strategies embedded in this that I could choose. Like I actually have this invisible toolbox. I don't know it's there because somebody else is doing it for me.
Yeah.
You know? So how do we like make that toolbox visible?
Yeah. Okay. I'm into this. Let me sort of see if I'm going to write some of these things down.
Awesome. So yeah, I think thinking about like who the character is, like, is it your teacher? Is it a teacher who's like kind of pulling back the curtain and revealing like, here's all these tools that I use to help you learn better? Is it a kid? Is it like somehow a kid that has that knowledge? Is it parents who are specifically kind of have gone through this experience of trying to teach their kids from home? Like, who is the character?
Yeah. I don't know. There's something compelling about it potentially being a kid, because I think that still in the grand scheme, we are communicating to children at home. Mm-hmm. So would having a peer be the one sort of bringing this voice of experience be better than having a teacher tell you more, or a parent?
I think the interesting thing to think about there is like, you know, Bill Nye is an adult, and like, I don't know if he has more credibility because he's an adult.
Yeah.
Like, so why would this kid, I'm totally, I agree with you that like making it more kid centric is really important. But how would our character kid have the knowledge that like the kid at home doesn't? Like, is there a story we could tell about like why that this kid has more credibility?
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe that is worthwhile for it to then be an adult. Like, it's an adult talking to kids, but I mean, I think that is one of the benefit or one of the successes of Bill Nye is like, he's not talking down to kids, but he's also making it. He is intentionally communicating to children in a way that's understandable.
Yeah.
Which I actually think is something that teachers do quite well. So there also, you know, there was something too from Halima and Arjun about sort of like wanting to be able to trust the expertise, like where it's coming from and that kind of thing. So maybe it is a teacher, and it's a teacher who sort of represents, or at least acknowledges and understands that it's not a teacher talking to other parents. I don't know. Yeah,
I don't know. I have an idea. Like, I wonder if it is a parent or like a couple of parents or a parent partnership. That like what if one of them was like a psychologist and one of them was like a neuroscientist, but they also had practical experience, like somehow they'd been through this before, like trying to teach their kids at home, because that would get to the parent, for parents by parents, but we could kind of like build in some expertise. But then I think we need an angle, like a narrative about why they have practical advice, because a neuroscientist and a psychologist may not actually know how to communicate to kids and parents about the best practices.
Maybe they just are parents. Maybe that's their expertise. Is like they're just. I mean, I wonder if there's some element of just being like their expertise is that like they have an expertise in like learning or cognitive science or psychology or space or something, right? Like that's their real expertise. But that is coupled with the fact that like they're just a parent at home teaching the same way to everyone else. Like they have learned through experience, and there's a lot of transparency in that they're not doing it well, that this is really hard. And I like this idea of it being a team. So rather than sort of being this like one expert that's like a superhero that knows everything that's like unattainable, is in fact it's like 4 or 5 different people who are able to sort of represent a broad understanding, and that there is just like a lot of humility. Like they're like maybe the opposite of superheroes, which I think is actually one of the things about the Bill Nye thing is like, maybe it's a little bit around budget, but it's also like he's just running down the soccer field and then like gets in his car and has to like drive some, like it feels very like he's not larger than life. He just like, it's the same way that you or I would do it. He just happens to be the one telling the story.
Yeah. I wonder if there's something about like their parents, but like somehow they've been through this before. Like, what if they, and I like what you're saying about the parent team. I think that's great. What if they like time traveled? Like they were in the future, like post COVID, and they'd like been through this whole thing. And so they can tell stories about when it was hard, and and then they have expertise that they can share in terms of what they did over time.
Yeah. So like there's sort of this like super fictional supernatural element to their sort of character.
Or they just like maybe post COVID, someone also invented time travel. And so now they can like go back and say like, we learned so much that we wish we knew,
Yeah. I mean, is that so? Yes, I'm all on board. I think that's totally. Does that? And I guess maybe this is part of the prototype. Like, does that resonate as much as someone just sort of saying like I didn't time travel. I just did it 2 weeks ago, and so I might just be 2 weeks ahead of you because you haven't done this lesson yet, or like. I guess what I'm sort of, I sort of love, I guess it's kind of like, if it's a graphic novel idea, like, is it comic book superhero, or is it sort of like Bill Nye, where it's just like, it's like human, it's like so human. It's just like a toy on a soccer field inside of like an old 1980s car that drives down the street. I think we just pick, because I think the validity is, I think the idea is the same, right? It's about sort of someone who has an expertise that's like essentially one step ahead of you. And that could be one step ahead, come back in a time machine, which I think would be really fun because it would allow us to sort of have a little bit more of like a supernatural or not super, but like a comic book level sort of like unrealism, or it's rooted in real, like,
I wonder if the time travel like gets us both, because you're not a superhero. Like you don't have superpowers. Like you're not coming back because you're a superhero. You just have a little bit more experience because of time. I also, this is making me think, like, I wonder if we also put a kid on the team. That's like always like, that doesn't make sense. Like, explain it another way, like kind of like comically is like, don't do that,
Okay, great.
That could be fun too.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So okay, great. Typos in here. So where do maybe we can take a swing at sort of synthesizing this. What's our big idea for the theme posted note?
So I think it's like character based stories to share, tips or strategies for learning how to learn. I don't know. What do you think?
Sorry, I was having a sip of coffee. Character stories to share strategies. Yeah. And I think that it's strategies for learning how to learn through activities.
Yep.
So it's not just videos about how, like you learn by doing something together.
Yep.
So like you do a drawing exercise, which actually is an exercise around, like it's fun because you're drawing, but it's actually an exercise about understanding where you like to learn best. Like you draw by a window, do you draw on the ground? Do you draw on a chair? Do you draw on a tree? Like that kind of stuff.
Yep. Awesome. Great. All right. Do we feel good about this? We want to keep going?
Yeah, I think it seems great.
All right.